The FIA has just issued a technical directive banning a qualifying exploit used by Mercedes and Red Bull-powered teams, one that handed them a raw power advantage of between 50 and 100 kilowatts at the end of a flying lap. This was not a gray area that slipped through unnoticed for months. This erupted in under 3 races, drew an emergency response from Ferrari, forced driver incidents at 2 separate Grands Prix, and has now been formally closed as of this week, ahead of the Miami Grand Prix. To understand what happened, you need to understand what changed this season. The 2026 technical regulations introduced what is arguably the most radical power unit architecture in the modern era. A strict 50/50 power split between the internal combustion engine and the electrical motor generator unit kinetic, known as the MGUK. Under these regulations, the MGUK is permitted to deploy a maximum of 350 kilowatts of electrical power, a figure that represents an enormous proportion of total car output. Because of this, the FIA mandated what engineers refer to as a ramp-down phase, a controlled, gradual reduction of electrical deployment as a car approaches the timing line at the end of a lap. The purpose of this rule, according to the technical framework, is direct, to prevent cars from suddenly losing power at high speed, which poses a real and immediate safety risk to any following traffic. The regulation was well-intentioned. What the teams found was a way around it, and the mechanism that enabled it was written into the very safety architecture of the power unit itself. According to reporting by Automotor Unsport and confirmed across La Gazzetta dello Sport and The Race, both Mercedes and Red Bull Ford had independently identified the same loophole. Built into the 2026 power unit regulations is an emergency override, a provision designed to protect hardware in the event of a critical system fault. If the MGUK detects an issue that could cause imminent damage, the system is permitted to shut down instantly without following the mandated gradual reduction. This bypass exists for legitimate engineering reasons. It is a safety valve, not a performance tool. What Mercedes and Red Bull found was that this emergency shutdown could be deliberately triggered at the end of a qualifying lap, rather than losing power progressively. 50 kilowatts per second in a controlled step-down. Teams could dump the entire remaining battery charge in a single burst, sustaining full 350 kilowatt deployment all the way to the timing line. As Crash.net confirmed, this handed those drivers an effective power advantage of 50 to 100 kilowatts over rivals in the closing meters of the lap. The trade-off? The MGUK is locked out for 60 seconds following the shutdown. During a qualifying run, when a driver is already slowing to return to the pit lane, that 60-second penalty carries zero meaningful consequence. The lap time benefit was described by GP Blog as marginal, measured in thousandths of a second. But in a qualifying session where grid positions are separated by hundredths, those thousandths matter. The trick did not appear overnight. Its trail runs across the first 3 rounds of the 2026 season. At the Australian Grand Prix, the season opener in Melbourne, rival teams noticed unusual behavior from Mercedes and Red Bull-powered cars after practice simulations. Drivers were slowing noticeably after runs in a pattern that didn't immediately make sense to observers. As the race reported, it was not clear to everyone at the time that this deceleration was directly linked to the MGUK exploit. The connection became clearer only in hindsight. In China, the trick was not deployed at all. The reason was purely geometric. The run from the final corner to the timing line at the Shanghai International Circuit is exceptionally short, leaving insufficient distance to extract any meaningful advantage from the emergency override. It was in Japan at Suzuka where everything came into sharp focus. Suzuka features longer high-speed sections leading to its timing line, making it a circuit where the trick offered a tangible benefit. Both Red Bull and Mercedes evaluated the exploit as worthwhile for qualifying. As a result, the side effects became impossible to ignore. Suzuka is not a circuit that forgives unpredictable car behavior. It is one of the fastest, most technically demanding tracks on the calendar. And the events of qualifying weekend there illustrated precisely why the FIA moved when they did. According to Motorsport Week, Kimi Antonelli, driving for Mercedes, experienced severely reduced power, following a run as a direct result of the MGUK lockout. Max Verstappen, despite Red Bull's difficult start to the 2026 campaign, encountered identical issues after a qualifying simulation. Most dramatically, Williams driver Alex Albon stopped on track during practice after encountering complications linked to the same phenomenon. Cars stopping on a live Suzuka circuit during qualifying or its preparation represent a genuine danger. The race reported that the FIA spoke directly with power unit manufacturers at Suzuka, stating clearly that while the MGUK trick was technically within the existing rules, teams had an obligation to ensure these system behaviors did not leave cars stranded or compromised during active track sessions. Mercedes, recognizing both the safety concern and the limited performance gain at Suzuka relative to the risks, chose to disable the algorithm for qualifying at the Japanese Grand Prix. The exploit was legal. The consequences were not acceptable. Ferrari had been watching closely since Australia. According to Motorsport Week, the Scuderia formally opened a dialogue with the FIA, not to allege illegality, but to request clarification on the risks. Ferrari's position acknowledged the tactic was within the letter of the regulations while questioning whether its safety implications warranted intervention. This was a calculated move, with rival manufacturers also evaluating whether they needed to configure their own software to replicate the exploit. The pressure on the FIA was building from multiple directions. The FIA responded with a Technical Directive, the governing body's standard instrument for closing regulatory loopholes without a full rule rewrite. As the race confirmed, with sources close to the governing body, the directive draws a clear line. The instant MGUK shutdown option remains available to teams, but its use is now restricted exclusively to genuine technical difficulties. Exploiting it as a deliberate performance tool in qualifying is prohibited, effective immediately. The timing is significant. The directive lands ahead of the Miami Grand Prix, a race where the run to the timing line could theoretically have offered competitive returns from the exploit. That window is now closed. 3 races, 2 manufacturers, 1 technical directive. The MGUK exploit that Mercedes and Red Bull built into their qualifying software was never hidden. It was identified, tracked, escalated through official channels, and ultimately banned in a compressed timeline that reflects just how quickly the 2026 regulations are being tested in the real world. The broader picture matters here. This is not an isolated incident. The 2026 power unit architecture, with its unprecedented electrical contribution, was always going to create pressure points that no regulation writer could fully anticipate. The ramp-down rule was designed to protect safety. The emergency override was designed to protect hardware. Together, they created a gap that 2 of the sport's most technically sophisticated organizations found simultaneously. The FIA has closed that gap. What comes next, as teams continue to probe the boundaries of the most complex power unit regulations in F1 history, remains one of the defining stories of this season. I'll continue bringing you only verified Formula One statistics, real driver interviews, and documented race analysis. No clickbait, no speculation. Just the facts about what's actually happening in Formula One based on official sources and verified information.